Now, we've all heard the saying that it's not what you know, but who you know. Or is it? Personal networks and connections have always been a fundamental part of a successful career strategy, but as the employment landscape changes, so too does the way we network. What does it take to remain employable and resilient in a difficult job market? What questions must we ask ourselves and teach future professionals to ask in order to access hidden job opportunities? Our next speaker will explore existing networking practice, the impact of recent industry changes, and what it might take to stay connected amidst a world of constant change. So please allow me to introduce to you Martin Evans. Martin is a career development and graduate employment professional with 8 years' experience in the career space here at QUT. 5 of those years have been spent facilitating employment programs in the tertiary sector, including QUT's real-world placement program. With an industry background in commercial and graduate recruitment in the business and IT industries, Martin is a passionate advocate for progressive employment practice and is currently working on his Masters in Career Development. Please welcome Martin to the stage.
Hello everybody. So as was mentioned, I am at present the facilitator of a program here at QUT with the goal of being able to connect our students with industry well ahead of the time that they graduate, as soon as humanly possible is our preference. So our role sits squarely in the middle of that process. So we are in a position where we try to find out what industry is doing, what does industry want, as we've heard, how is industry changing, what impacts or changes will that have on the way that people find work, and how can we communicate that to the students and the people who are joining our program from that student perspective. So today what I wanted to quickly talk about is about the hidden job market. Now for those who haven't heard of that term before, the hidden job market, can I get a show of hands? Is anybody familiar with that term, the hidden job market? Mostly not. Cool, this is good news. So the hidden job market is basically any opportunity that doesn't make it to public viewing on a social media or web platform, including LinkedIn, never makes it to visibility in any form of print media or any kind of general circulation in the public. Most of the time with the hidden job market, it never makes it to the public at all. And if it does make it to the public, quite often you'll find that there will be certain elements of the public that might see it, but certainly not everybody. So the hidden job market, and for those who have been in their careers for a little while, such as myself, just a quick show of hands, who amongst you has actually sourced a job or a career opportunity in a way other than a direct application through a website? A few? So have a look around, there's quite a few hands here. So this is not an uncommon thing, this is incredibly common. But the term hidden job market may be a bit of a misnomer. It might be a bit of a misdirection there. This quote here is one that I quite like, and it's less about being hidden, because hidden almost implies that someone is actively trying to hide it from you. Instead, what you might find is a lot of these opportunities that maybe aren't directly visible, may be simply available through informal means or through a way which only certain people are able to access, through design or otherwise. So, those are some pretty big numbers there. Those numbers have filtered through since from statistical reports from the early 80s, including one first done by the ABS in 1982. Fairly consistently, those numbers are filtered down to the present day, and I believe the last global estimation survey was done by Hayes Recruitment, which is a large-scale recruitment company. So their estimation remains the same. That's been a consistent number throughout this story over the last 20-odd years or so. However, if you look at what the hidden job market actually is, that number can vary greatly depending upon the variables in the given situation you might be looking at. So, when you are looking at each different opportunity or each different career, some of you might be heading into the digital space, others might be planning careers in health, careers in education, so on and so forth. Every single culture, or every single industry, and within those industries, each particular employer will have their own set of variables. And those variables will directly affect the ability to be able to access opportunities within those organisations. Variables such as language. Collectively, and this comes from the Graduate Recruitment Australia industry survey, which they do once a year, for the last 20 years of collected information in those surveys, communication has been ranked as the #1 attribute that graduate employees are looking for. But if you were to talk to the graduate recruiters from all of those different industries involved in that survey, they would all have a very different definition of what communication means to them. So some of them, it's for instance in the legal sector, top tier law firms, communication can be quite formal. Everything is very, there's a lot of dictation, there's a lot of, everything is recorded, and it's a very different tone than perhaps if you're working in the engineering space as a geologist based out of Chinchilla for 6 weeks at a time. The communication in that aspect might be a very different idea. So what that impacts in terms of how you access those opportunities is, how do you understand, or what is your understanding rather of how those industries function, and do you have the skills to be able to communicate in that space? Timeframes, a lot of different industries will hire different types of people in different ways at different times of year. Things like culture. Every industry will have its own way of interacting with each other. Again, back in the legal space, in the top tier law firms in Brisbane, there is a very strong sporting culture. At least 11 out of the top 13 top tier law firms will have their own representative teams, and it's actually highly suggested for graduates to join a sporting team and have that on their resume before they ever submit an application to those positions. And expectations as well. So we've talked a little about today in regards to how expectations are changing in response to digital innovation and digital changes. The expectations go far beyond that. Expectations about who you are as a person. What are the transferable skills that you are bringing with you? What is your background? Who are you connected to? Lots of those kinds of ideas. My point is that every industry, every employer will have a whole number of variables involved in their graduate recruitment strategies. And I'll talk about graduate recruitment at the moment because obviously you all looking to come into the university space. This will be a pending consideration for you, but a lot of these things will extend far beyond that into your professional careers as well. But whenever you look to engage with an industry to source a career opportunity, you will find that there at any given time will be a number of variables that you'll need to consider that may impact how easily you access opportunities in that industry or with a specific employer. So, as we heard before, it's that old saying, it's not about who you know, it's about, not about what you know, it's about who you know. I would disagree with that. I would say it is about what you know. I would say it's mainly about what you know. It's about what you're trying to learn. It's about how current your information is. It's about how regularly you are looking to source current information about your industry and what the people are doing in that industry and where you are in regards to those activities. It is also about who you know. It's about your professional networks. It's about how you connect with those people. It's about how well you understand the humans in your industries and what those humans are doing and how that's likely to change. But I think particularly relevantly, especially in today's conversation, it's also about what they know as well. It's about not only having a network, a healthy network hopefully, it's also about using that network to be able to leverage the most up-to-date and current information and how you then factor that into your career planning. I'll give you some examples. So even here within QUT, we've seen evidence of that over the last couple of years. You may be familiar with the idea of a careers fair. In fact, we just had it yesterday. The sunburn is evidence of that on my face today. Now, in terms of our careers fairs, in 2009, we had 145 employers. Since that time in 2009, we've had a consistently dropping rate of employers. In fact, just yesterday, we only had 82 employers. That's a significant drop in the last few years. However, the number of employers coming on campus to engage with students directly has increased by 30%. So it's not that the engagement has dropped, in fact the engagement has grown significantly, it's just that people are no longer engaging in the same ways. So looking at what's happening and how people are sourcing talent and looking for candidates in their given industries, it's a changing form. And if students aren't aware of those opportunities, so for instance we had at least 900 students go through our careers fair yesterday, how many of those students were aware that those employers who weren't there are going to be on campus next week at a mid-tier accounting firm roadshow? How many were aware? We're not sure. So things like that, it's not just that they're engaging, or their non-traditional engagement means that students have to be more informed in order to be able to continue to access those opportunities. Digital recruitment and social media is having a huge impact on the way that companies will engage and source students for their industries. One of my favourite examples from the last couple of years is the Department of Defence in the UK designed a billboard that sits in those ad shells at bus shelters. And the billboard immediately engaged and sent a message to those who are in a given proximity to the advertisement and invited them to play a game. And the game was a medical-based game, almost like a game of operation. So it gave them a series of tasks and things that they had to do using the digital interface of their devices, and those who scored over a certain percentage, their information was collected and sent back to the recruitment team at the Defence Force. And so the Defence Force had an idea of who the people out there were who had the skills that they were looking for in this particular given instance that might be worthwhile contacting or sending future information to. So that gamification is a huge part of this. this. So people are looking for non-traditional methods, things that are a little more interesting than stale paper and pen applications. They're looking to get information that isn't readily available in your average CV. Again, emerging technology, I've given you one example. Another example is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is playing a massive role in how people source talent and how they engage with not only students and graduates, but professionals moving forward. The most recent study I found said that in the US, at least 87% of employers admit to using LinkedIn or some social media platform to vet candidates before they make a hiring decision. 87%. And studies would suggest that Australia is only a year or two behind in terms of our professional practice from a recruitment perspective. So this is becoming a staple part of the recruitment process. So it introduces a whole a series of new considerations from a candidate perspective. For instance, how easily found are you? What does your LinkedIn profile look like? What is your digital presence like, and is that a consistent message with your application? There is a website called pipl.com, P-I-P-L.com, that is a search engine that only searches social media platforms. So recruiters have been using it for some time, but it is a way for people to be able to get a very quick picture of what you look like online, and is that the kind of person that they would be interested in engaging with from an employment perspective. And this particular point is a very interesting one. Quite often we find that a lot of industries who are going through the changes that the digitisation of industries will bring, quite often will not change the name of the positions that they are looking for students for. So-and-so officer, graduate, intern, all of these kinds of terms. The terminology isn't shifting drastically. What is shifting is what those companies expect of the people that they select to fill those roles. So the problem that creates is that unless you're up to the minute and you understand exactly what that company is looking for, you run the risk of making assumptions about what your skill set needs to be, and therefore what you might put on an application or what skills you might develop, only to find that what they were actually looking for was something completely different. A good example of that is we've noticed a massive increase in the desire from industry for students who know how to code effectively. A couple of basic languages especially, Java, PHP, HTML. We've found quite a few industries that traditionally had no involvement whatsoever in coding have started to request this or add this to their position descriptions. Even worse are those who have a preference for it but don't add it to their position descriptions. So that's an advantage that might be a little even more difficult to actually identify. So the point really is that moving forward into the future, change will be a constant. It always has been and it always will be. The difference moving forward, I think, is that the rate of change will increase and will continue to increase. So it increases the need for you, each individually, to be your own manager, your own CEO of your personal brand and your own career development. So it's a matter of self-awareness. Moving forward, as things change as rapidly as they will, self-awareness will be the key to making sure that you remain resilient and relevant in your given industries. Industries will change. Are you changing with them? So the question really is, what kinds of questions are we asking ourselves? Is this part of our professional practice? Are these questions we should only ask once off, or is this something we should be doing on a regular basis? Here are some examples of questions that perhaps might be a good idea of getting into the habit of asking. First of all, establish what you actually know about your industries. You'll all have a different variation of this. You'll all be wanting to do different things. You might have 3 students all studying or looking to study the same degree with 3 completely separate career outcomes or career dreams and hopes. So start to ask the questions, what are my career goals? Where am I actually headed? How far into the future can I actually see? Should I be trying to plan for when I'm 53? Or should I really just be looking at the road ahead and seeing what I can actually foresee and anticipate? How strong is your current network? It's never too soon to start generating or building a professional network. You might think, as a high school student, this is something I'll deal with later on. It's never too early. Start thinking about opportunities that you can gain whilst you're working at McDonald's or Coles. Questions you can ask professionals around you. What kind of information can you gain from them? What kind of relationships can you build in a professional manner? How can you use that kind of information to help construct and build a career plan that you can stick to moving forward? Think about your level of industry knowledge. If you're looking to head into a particular area, I would imagine that you would want to do that with the most relevant and current information possible. Learn about your industry. All of the information is already there. So start to think about ways that you can start to absorb a lot of that information before you make your decision, even regarding your tertiary education. Are the degrees that you are undecided on? Are you making decisions based upon advice, or are you sourcing your own information on which to base those decisions? Do you understand industry recruitment practice? Each industry, as I've mentioned, will recruit people differently. How are people being recruited in the industries that you are interested in engaging with? it's really important to also identify and understand and try to define the spaces or the gaps in your knowledge so you can fill them as quickly as possible and continue to fill them with relevant information. Think about external influences. The theme of today, the digital, the technology and the digitization that is happening is changing industries and changing them very, very quickly. How is digitization going to be affecting any industries that you might be interested in? Are you aware of how? If not, that might be a very relevant question to look into. Is your skill set relevant? It is not a lie, and it is a stark reality that IT students will quickly find that what they're learning in first year may well be outdated by year 3 or by the time they've started their masters. So think very carefully about not only what you're learning and what you're looking to learn, but how that may or may not be relevant moving forward into industries. What type of skills will you need to continually start to develop to update your skill set to stay relevant in an employment sense? Think about networking. Every single industry will network in a different way. Okay, I've used law as a bit of an ongoing example. If you are interested in law, it would be good for you to know that the legal industry, from a networking perspective, is still very face-to-face. It's a very personal affair. It's about personal networks that you own. It's about people that you're aware of and then that are aware of you. And it's still, in a lot of ways, quite an old school process, which I find quite interesting. Comparing that to how people network in the startup sector. QUT is heavily involved in the startup space, especially from a tech perspective. How networking happens from that angle is completely different. It's all about group work. It's about online engagement. It's about the conversations that happen in the digital space as opposed to face-to-face handshakes and coffees. Moving forward, and perhaps this may even be the most important question, this is information that you will use to plot your path forward. How do you actually source your information and where do you source it from? It's not a bad question to actually challenge some of the advice you might receive. Advice, no matter how well or good the intention behind it may be, is no guarantee of accuracy. So it's really important for you to take responsibility for that and try and get a full gamut or a broad perspective of what the consensus on any given topic might be and make your own decisions. Do you plan time? And I would imagine this is something to really develop into a habit. Okay? Question asking is a habit that you'll need to form and need to continue until the day you retire. Really? Make time for it, plan it into your professional practice. Think about your skill sets, think about your education moving forward. Your education will not end on the day that you receive your nice shiny piece of paper and walk across the podium with a hat on. Your education needs to be a living, ongoing thing. So plan ahead, ingest that thought, and make sure it's a constant question that you do ask. The reason I would suggest that it's so important to continue to ask these questions is that the answers will change. And as we've heard, change can happen extremely quickly. And it's likely that those who aren't asking themselves these questions and those who are not trying to stay relevant may well find themselves in some of those positions that may be easily replaced simply because they weren't aware of what the current trends or emerging tech might be doing to their industries. So very relevant questions and important to ask on a regular basis. So, final slide to finish off. There's a lot of discussion in regards to, from an education perspective, a lot of discussion in regards to how do we prepare future professionals for industries that do not yet exist. That's an extremely valid question, but I'll leave you with another question. You can have the skills to do a job, but that doesn't mean that you have the means or the opportunities to access work in those industries. Even now, we have plenty of students who have fantastic technical capability, but without the mindset or the career planning or the goals to be able to institute, are not able to access the opportunities that they want in their industries. So how are we looking to engage with and teach future professionals of how to access opportunities in markets and industries that don't yet exist? Thank you.